Silly's done it again.
Special thank you to all my lovely patrons, especially Nerf Nothing for being an amazing pro patron.
Greetings audience, I'm Boomstick, and today we're going to be talking about the Cynthia from Silly Butts. The Cynthia is a 3D printed bolt action springer that fires half darts from straight Talon mags. Now obviously Silly's become pretty well known in the hobby for creating a whole load of different blasters, from the remix of the skewer into the amazing pump skewer to things like the Silly Max and obviously the Slab. Very, very popular. Now he's brought us a bolt action springer. Now I printed this Cynthia myself using the files that Silly Butts has on his GitHub. I'll have that link down below in the description. And it also uses a hardware kit from Out of Darts, which I will also have linked down in the description. I do believe you can get a Cynthia from a variety of places, but this is just where I got mine, so I can only talk about my experiences with those. I had no issues with the hardware. It all went together very easily. Much like many other Silly Butts designs, they're very intuitive in how they go together. I think I got halfway through the instructions and then I just stopped following it because it just made sense, and I haven't had any issues since. Now I'm not sure if I talked about this in the past, but it is sporting the Silly Scar, which is the scar barrel that allows you to throw a Mega XL dart on the barrel and actually get pretty good ranges with it, honestly. Now I will say it does work way better without firing a dart through, but you could technically fire a dart and Mega XL at the same time. You just won't get as good of ranges or accuracy. So aside from the very easy assembly, let's talk about comfort of it. The grip is very comfortable. I did also put the foregrip on the front here. It is all Picatinny up in the front. They do have a variety of front options, both longer and shorter, I believe. One's with and without Picatinny, one's with and without these hole cutouts. So there are a lot of options for you to choose. And much like many other Silly Butt designs, especially springers that take mags, it has the quick swap barrel system that Silly designed, which is a wonderful design, if I do say so myself. It allows you to quickly change barrels, especially if you have a system where you know what it's hitting with each barrel, and you can very quickly drop or go up in FPS depending on what you're using. Now, aside from the grip and the foregrip and all this Picatinny, let's talk about the actual bolt itself. Now, this was one of my complaints with the Indra, where the flex in it was really bad. And the Kirin, excuse me, not the Kirin, that's the injection molded version of the Renfield. The Renfield has a full metal bolt action system right here, which I understand why, is because it is the most sturdy, but it is also custom hardware, which this doesn't use any custom hardware. If you have enough bits and bobs lying around from leftover slug hardware kits, you could probably build this without getting a hardware kit for the most part. And obviously Silly does have all the hardware listed, so if you wanted to source all of it separately, you very easily could. You may wonder why I'm using the left-handed variant when I am right-handed, and that is because I actually built this for one of my local players, so I will be handing this off to them once this review is finally out, which they may have been waiting for a bit. Sorry this took so long. But the nice thing is, you can technically just swap it around. Now, obviously, it's not perfect. It doesn't notch in. It doesn't have like the little notches here like it does on this side, but it does work, and I can use it right-handed. Now, what I tended to do when I was running this in the games is I would actually top prime it. I don't know why I kept doing it this way, but like when I would prime the Cynthia, it was more like this. Now, I did have situations where when I would prime it back all the way, it would get stuck on the outside, but a quick little jiggle and it would go right back into place. And I will say that the prime, not bad. Unlike with others I've had in the past where it's a very difficult prime because of the angle, I did find that this was actually not that bad of a prime in comparison to those other ones. Now, is it heavier than a standard prime you would have with a pump action? Yes, but that is because of the angle of having this whole bolt action system. The Cynthia does also use this very nice mag release that I really enjoy. I find it's very easy to pretty much push with either my middle finger or with my trigger finger just by pushing down, because it gives you both options. Now, the one thing I didn't do, which I wish I had when I ran this game, is put some kind of sight, whether iron sights or red dot or something, because I really feel like this would have benefited from having sights on it. But I will admit, I tend to usually play very kind of just eyeball it and fire, so that's my normal play style. It's I found that works pretty well, but for this one, I really wish I had some kind of iron sight or something like that, just for the way that this blaster plays. I felt like it really needed it. But anyways, that's enough jabbering. Let's go take it out to the field, shall we?
The Cynthia performed rather well on the Maryland Nerf Herder field, which has a 200 FPS cap. It would have performed better with some kind of sight, but for a 200 FPS Springer, it's able to hold its own. I did find that trying to run and prime is not an easy task, and the bolt action style does make for a slower rate of fire when compared to a pump action Springer. The best place for the Cynthia I've found is near the rear, where you don't have to dodge as many darts and can lean on the cover or ground for stability while priming and firing. When I took it to DMV Nerfers and the Southern Maryland House of Nerf to use on their competitive fields, I tended to have a harder time. The slower rate of fire and the bolt action priming were my biggest issues. Due to the priming method, I wasn't able to choke up as much on the blaster, which caused me to stick more of the blaster out than I would using a different style of blaster. It still had the power and accuracy of any other 3D printed Springer, which meant it could be competitive, but not as competitive as other Springers that I've built. And this is really just due to the style of priming being bolt action. Now, the player I built this for loves bolt action, and they are really happy with how it performed. So I really think it just comes down to a matter of taste of whether or not you prefer bolt action or pump action or whichever in between.
Now let's get into my overall opinions. I do think that this is a fun blaster. I do think if you really want this bolt action feel of a blaster, this is probably the way to go. This will definitely be the cheapest and most available bolt action that you're going to be able to get your hands on, and I do believe that does sway a lot as to how good it is. And I do dig the design. I do think it's a nice looking blaster. It's very thin, which threw me off. It's a very thin blaster, which surprised me. And I think I'm just used to a little bit wider of a blaster. So it's not a negative, it's just not something I'm used to. Now, as you saw in the gameplay, I did not really care for this during competitive rounds just because of how long it is, because you tend to be out here and you have a whole lot of blasters sticking out. I tend to like to choke up more during competitive, so this I didn't think was a good fit for competitive. Others might disagree, but that's just my opinion. HVZ, yes, you can. In fact, I've seen somebody run one of these for HVZ with the short barrel and a weaker spring, and they actually ran it the same way I am, where you're running it with your offhand so that way you can rapid fire more easily, which that's just a con of bolt action in general, is that you are going to have a lower rate of fire. So could you run this for HVZ? Yes. I don't think it's necessarily the most practical, but who am I to say to not run something impractical for an HVZ? I've done that many times. Now, for just regular 200 FPS PvP events, it did pretty well. I still kind of had that same issue where I ended up with a lot of blasters sticking out, but it held its own on the field. It's still a 200 FPS Springer, so you get that kind of performance. It's going to have that same kind of a performance. It's just going to have a slower rate of fire. So if you're wanting something, or if you're going to be somebody who hangs in the back and does a lot of plinking from the back, I could see how this could be useful in that regard. Now, and I'll admit, I am not the biggest bolt action fan. As much as I love quirky blasters, for some reason bolt action has just never really spoken to me. But if you want to bolt action, this is probably your best that you're going to be able to get. So absolutely, if you like the bolt action, go for it. Like it's fun. It's a silly blaster, so it works as well as all other silly blasters. It's designed well. It builds easy. The hardware's not that expensive. It's a good blaster. So yeah, let's bring in our scoreboard, shall we? All right, Cynthia's gonna go right there. Yep, I think it's you lose a bit of competitiveness, but it's still rather fun. It is still a fun blaster, and I know there's a lot of people who have been really wanting a good bolt action option to run for games. And that has been my review of the Cynthia. Definitely check out all the links down below in the description to find the files and the hardware and all that fun stuff. And hey, go ahead and throw that video a like, and maybe even leave me a comment telling me what you thought of the Cynthia and what other features you'd like to see on blasters that you don't see very many of. And as always, I've been Boomstick, and I'll see you on the field.